I had a transcript done by very, very talented people, word for word, comma for comma, done by people that do it for a living. We had an exact transcript.
That right there, an exact transcript, as you know better than most, Phil, is not what we have seen. We saw a summary with the already mentioned ellipses in there, where today's witness apparently says, in part, the president spoke to fill that space. We also, however, have reporting tonight from your colleague, Greg Miller, who says this: officials describe the discrepancies cited by Vindman as minimal and of limited significance to investigators. Even Vindman didn't ascribe any sinister motive or effect to the changes he sought that were not incorporated into the document. So, Phil, do we have two things that are true? A document that is a summary and not a transcript, with discrepancies that may not be earth-shattering in their nature in what was left out?
That's right, Brian. And while the discrepancies may not be earth-shattering, they are notable. And the ellipses that were left in the summary, the rough transcript, were very notable. They raised suspicions back when the White House released that document several weeks ago, and that will continue now, because while Vindman filled in some of those gaps before Congress today, talking about the mention of Burisma by the Ukrainian president, as well as Trump's mention of Biden being on tape, what we don't understand yet is why that was omitted from the final transcript. Why was that not added to the document that was then preserved in the White House? We also don't have answers still as to why this document was kept so secret inside of the government. It was put into what Elizabeth just referred to as the vault, which is this very secure way to hold on to classified, sensitive material, not necessarily a standard foreign leader call like this. And that raised a ton of suspicion in the administration, and we don't have any answers yet as to why officials in the White House were motivated to store the document there and keep it away from prying eyes.
Ashley, I know you don't speak for them, but you sure do report on them. How harrowing must this be inside the West Wing because of the nature this has now taken on? Insiders, in so many cases, lifelong public servants choosing to step forward, and thus far, all telling different parts of all the same narrative.
Well, on the one hand, it's worth noting this is a White House that has long operated not just in chaos, but under a number of inquiries. So there are some people who are perhaps not as alarmed as you or I might expect, because they can point to, for instance, the Mueller investigation. That said, there is a real understanding inside and outside the White House, among allies, among Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill, that this is not good, that this is gaining momentum and traction in a way that the Mueller investigation never really did, and that each one of these witnesses who are going up with their name behind closed doors, but testimony is leaking out and emerging, are all sort of marching in lockstep and painting a very clear picture, each one complementing the next, that is very damaging for this president, very damaging for this White House, and that even his allies generally feel uncomfortable trying to publicly defend.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.